Hello, all. This is the Crime Cafe, your podcasting source of great crime, suspense, and thriller writing. I'm your host, Debbie Mack. And before we get started, I would just like to remind you to please visit the Crime Cafe website, the link on my website at debbiemack.com. If you click on Crime Cafe, you can find links to the subscriptions to the podcast itself, the box set and anthology buy links, as well as Crime Cafe merchandise, a place where you can purchase merchandise. So just go to debbiemack.com, click on Crime Cafe, and check that out. So with that said, I am going to introduce now my guest, author, Allan Ansorge. I hope I'm saying that right. Welcome to the show, Allan.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Did I say that name right, Ansorge?
Close enough. I mean, that's been malformed
Ansorge?
so many. Well, if you were Dutch, it would be Ansorge.
Ansorge?
Yeah, and it just gets mutilated left and right. Between that, my mother hating me and spelling Allan with two L's and an A, I just life's been cruel, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I can sympathize because my husband's last name is Italian and everybody botches it. It's long in Italian.
I was thinking about changing my name to Anonymous once, but I heard it was taken.
Yeah, really. There's always John Doe.
True.
I've been reading, I think it's Very Close to Home. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, very close to home.
Very close to home.
Detective Victor Very.
Victor Very, yeah. He has quite the sense of humor. I like him. Please tell us about the book.
The book, the inspiration behind it was a true happening. There was a police officer that was called as a first attendee at an attempted robbery in a grocery store. And he had a heart attack in the process. And I thought, that is absolutely intriguing. And then I prefer writing female characters. And I have a number of them in the Bay Harbor series and in the Victor Very series. I think women are more interesting than men, actually. And the first responder to his heart attack is a 2-year female police officer. She's been on the beat for 2 years, and she aspires to become a detective. The police chief, in order to protect his because of a videotape, they saw that the detective was actually stalked into the grocery store. And that person took his gun, his badge, and his cell phone, and was going to shoot him in the grocery store. And when a shopper came around the corner, the assailant left. And she arrived, and she saves him by pumping aspirin into him. And when his boss decides that he needs a protector while he's healing, she volunteers for the job. And so they are awkward house fellows, to say the least. And yes. she induces her mother to come and help her to complete this task of protecting him. And her mother is ex-MI5 out of England. Well, she says she's ex, but she isn't really. She is MI5, MI6. And one of the comments her daughter makes about her is she can shoot the wings off of a flea, and I only sassed her once, which gives you a very accurate picture of what this woman is.
I was going to say, she's a pistol.
Yeah, she is, yeah. I really, like I said, there has to be a pony that pulls the wagon. You know, I really believe out of all those Budweiser horses, only one of them is really doing the work. And in this particular book, she is the one that pulls the story. She has help in it, obviously, but she is the main character in the book, even though it's titled Victor Very.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, yeah, he doesn't do a lot of investigating himself. It's more like he's at home organizing. Yeah.
He's an organizer. Well, he is the head of the detectives, so he's used to being a supervisor. She, on the other hand, answers to no one. Cynthia just does what Cynthia does, and she has some help that work out of her office, which is hidden in the convenience store. I thought that was kind of neat too. That she had to open the door to a milk cooler to get into the MI5 headquarters in the States. And it was meant to be funny, and it is funny.
I was going to say, how would you characterize your writing style? Humorous, mystery, cozy, hard-boiled? Is there?
I thought it was going to be traditional. I really envisioned it being. I always tell people I'm more Agatha Christie than I'm Edgar Allan Poe. I don't like gore in any way, shape, or form, and so for me, there was a murder committed prior to where the book starts in this thing that's mentioned, and I even hesitated at that. It's just not the nature of the beast, I guess. I don't enjoy that. And I don't particularly like or appreciate vulgarity either. And so people ask me, can my kid read this book? Can they read? That would be the starting point. I've the Bay Harbor series too is 3 books long now, and I'm finishing the 4th book right now. And same scenario. It's an ensemble cast, but there is romance in that one, in that series, and there's wedding or marriage proposals and that kind of stuff. But there's no sex, no blood, nothing of that nature.
So it's very, very G-rated?
Yeah, I think so. I read one of the reviews. I enjoy reading reviews, good ones and bad ones. And one of the reviews on Amazon says that one of the characters in the Bay Harbor series, Maggie Fletcher, who I also don't spend a lot of time creating descriptions of characters. I figure that if somebody is willing to spend money to buy the book, they must be smart enough to have the money. So that also would make them smart enough to have an imagination and paint the picture of the characters in their own mind by what they say and what they do.
I'm with you there. I don't like too much description.
With Maggie Fletcher, early on in the book, she's described as someone who is internet and addicted, and she was old enough she should have been a grandmother. And that's all I said about her. Well, one of the people that reviewed the book or wrote a review on Amazon said she was a foul-mouthed old broad. And Maggie Fletcher doesn't swear anywhere in the books. I hate it when people review books and they haven't read them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know.
And you can tell, if you're the writer, you can tell if they've really read the book or not. I'm sure you can too.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Now, your books are not unlike mine. You have humor in your books. You have really good character development.
Well, thank you.
I think Sam is really interesting and obviously written out of your own experiences, I would think.
To a certain extent. I've never been beaten up by the mob, or I've actually never handled a murder case. So, but I have had experience as a solo attorney. That a lot of that fed into the character. That was primarily it. It's interesting because I didn't write a lot of it from direct experience, but I don't want to talk a whole lot about me. but
oh, I do. I think comparing what we do and how we view it, I think it's very interesting.
Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate your kind words about the book. It's always nice when another author says something good about your work. And I'm enjoying the Victor Very book a lot. And I was curious about your Bay Harbor Mysteries.
Yeah.
Who are the characters in that, and what is the story arc?
There is a sheriff's deputy who was involved in an accident with a semi. And the night he proposed to his fiance, and she is killed in the accident, and his one leg is totally damaged, and he can no longer pass the physical for the sheriff's department.
Mm-hmm.
So he's mustered out, but he owned a boat on Lake Michigan, and it's located in a small town on what we refer to in Wisconsin as chartered boat towns. There isn't an awful lot there other than probably a local diner, a marina, and boats that people go in to hire to go out and fish on the lake. And that's what he decides he's going to get into. And all of a sudden they realize that someone killed him or tried to kill him on purpose. And the young lady that owns the diner in the marina, the guy that runs the marina, his mother, his ex-partner in the squad, and a girl who actually takes his place in the department, because when they have the vacancy, she moved up on the list and she became a deputy. And those people pooled together because they realized that they're not going to get a lot of official support on the thing to find out why they tried to kill him. So they take it on themselves to do it. So it's kind of a Jessica Fletcher thing where you have an amateur, several amateurs working with a detective to solve a case.
And what did you do in a previous life before you became an author? What was your career?
It's almost indelicate to say nowadays. I was a businessman. I worked in one industry from the time I was 16 years old on, an industry that most people would say, man, why did you want to do that? And I didn't really know at the time, but my son later explained it to me because he went into the same business. It was the foundry industry. In castings, melting metal, turning solid into liquid, and turning it into something useful. And worked in several companies, folded several companies, actually, that went out of business during the 80s. They were really beaten up badly by foreign interest, foreign imports. But I worked for a company that went under, and my boss in the company and I started a rep firm, and we got very lucky. And we grew a business, a sales rep business with American interest, based solely on American product. And it became successful. It's a delicate way to put it. It was successful. At one point, we were looking for a source. We found a source that we could represent. And I had been on the road for a couple of days, and I had secured a purchase order for a product that the president of a company made out the purchase order with a ballpoint pen right in front of me and handed it to me, which to me was kind of if nothing else, a modicum of sincere trust on his part, that he would take somebody that he had just met and say, you can do this for me. I believe in you.
Yeah.
When I got back to my office, the office for the company, which at that time was in my home, there was a message there that the source I intended to place that with had closed. And I had nowhere to go with a purchase order for $1.25 million.
Oh my gosh.
And we started looking for someone to do it. And we formed an alliance with a small startup company whose gross sales the year before that was $365,000. And I was standing there with $1.25 million, better than $1.25 million purchase order. And they went from 6 employees to, over a period of 3 years, to 108 employees with us selling for them.
Oh my gosh.
And eventually there was so much work there that one of the partners decided to leave, and the other partner said, you have to come in and buy out the company, or I'm going to have to close it. I can't run it myself. And we did.
Wow.
It was just, and it was a very successful journey for us. We did some things that were just not heard of in business at that time. We had fractional hours for women who wanted to be home to take their kids to school, then wanted to be able to pick them up and for lunchtime sometimes, or getting out of school. So we gave them the ability to come and finish their shift after their kids were home and fed. We reimbursed 100% of education as long as they maintained a C average in any field that they chose. So we had a couple of nurses assistants and one RN come out of it. It was interesting. It was fun.
Sounds fascinating. I mean, it sounds like you really were quite the entrepreneur.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. I guess that's what we were. I always refer to us as being exceedingly lucky, but
well, sometimes you make your luck, and that's
right place, right time for all parties concerned.
Exactly.
And the company is still functioning. It's still providing. We have people there that have been promoted within the company that started there when they were 18, and now they're managing the company.
Well, it sounds to me like the inspiration for your books is quite different than what you were doing as a business person.
I had always enjoyed writing. I'd always enjoyed reading. I was one of those kids that was bored in school all the time. And I went to grew up in a very small town, 300 people, and over half of the population spoke Welsh.
Wow.
Which was kind of strange. It was named Wales.
Wow.
Yeah. It's all been subdivided and that stuff now, and it's a bedroom community. But it was an interesting place to grow up because you saw the world as a microcosm right in front of you. There was good, bad, clean and dirty, everything all in one place, and you were close enough to it to see it as you were growing up. And you found out that nothing is ever all bad and nothing is ever all good.
Yeah.
And that's life really is.
Exactly. That's fascinating. I was fascinated to read that you went to a 4-room schoolhouse in your small town.
Yes, the library in that grade school was 4 foot long. It was a bookshelf and had a single row of books that was about 48 inches long.
Oh my gosh. And
my favorite book out of that was Crazy Quilt and Boxcar Children. Because the Boxcar Children grew up poorer than I was, so I thought I was pretty cool.
Well, that's something else.
Yeah. And Crazy Quilt was about a horse that slept in a bed with a quilt.
Wow.
When I got to high school, I bused for an hour and a half to get to a high school. And the high school had one street between it and a vacant lot in the library. And when I got into that library, the proverbial all hell broke loose because I spent all of my lunch hours in that library. And I read everything from Sue Barton's Student Nurse to the Pirates of Penzance plays and variations on it. And the librarians didn't even have me check books out anymore. They just said, take what you want and bring them back. Did
you ever read Cherry Ames mysteries?
No.
I used to read Nancy Drew and Cherry Ames.
I read Conan Doyle.
Yeah, Conan Doyle. Yeah,
and that went on even through our next January. My wife and I will indeed be celebrating with our children our 50th anniversary.
Congratulations!
We are all going together on a cruise in the Caribbean next January 12th, and when we were first married, we used to take turns reading Conan Doyle to each other at night.
Oh, that's nice.
And she is an avid reader. I really believe she keeps Kindle and coal. She probably reads 3 to 4 books a week.
My goodness.
She does not read my books once they're printed. She is my alpha reader. And all she does is comments on continuity. She does not concentrate on punctuation or anything like that. But she makes certain that the humor is there and that it's understandable.
That's good. That's wonderful.
Because when you write something funny, it's not easy to write funny.
It's not, no.
I spent a couple of hours with Carl Hyacin one time.
Yes, I was going to ask about him since you live in Florida.
Yeah. Actually, I was at Crime Spree, I believe it was.
Uh-huh.
No, Sleuth Fest. And he was there, and Brad Meltzer, John Lyon, and one of my idols, Stephen Cannell.
Oh, yes.
And the four of us were sitting around a table, and I don't know why I was included in the conversation, but we were outside, and the sun was just going down, and we were talking about writing. What else do writers do? You know, they talk about writing, and we were talking about writing humor. And Cannell said he couldn't do it. Brad Meltzer said, I tried twice. He said, I couldn't give the paper away. He said, even for scratch paper. He said, nobody wanted it, which I thought was a funny line in itself. And Hyacin looked at me and he said, I read Crossing the Center Line. And I said, I waited for the blow to come, you know, and it never came. He sat there and he said, I think what you do with the people in relationship to one another, you set the reader up so that they think the people are funny even when they're not being funny, because they're unusual characters. He said, not everybody decides to have a black man that's 90-some years old in a nursing home be a character in a book. And the dialogue that he has and the way he expresses himself, nothing he says is slapstick humor. It's not physical humor, anything. He sits there and he says, like, one of the lines that he quoted out of the book, which I think for me at that point in my writing career was the epitome. He said, when you have that man say, here comes that girl with the yellow dress. He said, it's funny. He said, my gal. He said, no, that's not right. It's my gal with the yellow dress. He said, having a guy that's 90-some years old have a crush on somebody because she's wearing a yellow dress, he said, doesn't get better than that.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That really must have felt good.
Yeah.
I admire Carl Hyacin so much.
So do I. He and Dorsey both. I just, they're like, they should be institutionalized, I think. they're not right in the head, you know.
Oh my gosh.
But they are funny.
Have you ever thought about writing satirical fiction?
No. I think that you have to, I think possibly it's formed by their occupations. Mm-hmm. They were both newspaper writers. Mm-hmm. And I think that they see and read so much that's so bad that they could turn anything into a joke. I think their exposure is what really makes them good.
That's a good point.
I think they bring something to the table that I don't have the luxury of having. It's somebody else who I find extremely funny in person, and I say that to people, and is Jeffrey Deaver. Jeffrey Deaver is one of the fun. Oh, you will go to C3. He's going to be at C3 this year.
I'll be there. Yeah. Yeah.
He was there for the second one. One of the more gracious people I've ever been around. He and what's his name? Galbraith? John Galbraith?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Is that what his name is?
Something like that. Galbraith.
Yeah, something like that. He, the ex-fireman, volunteer fireman and that stuff. Mm-hmm. And he was there the same year. And for some absurd reason, they put me at the author signing with those two people. And people are coming up and asking to get pictures taken with them. And John had a New York Times bestseller, like some other people I know. Twice, I hear. He was on the New York Times list, and so was Deaver. And I was sitting in between them. And every time somebody came up to get a picture, Deaver would grab a hold of me and squeeze me into the photo and say, "You belong in here. Your book's damn funny."
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
He's a very gracious man.
I've met so many well-known authors who are just wonderful people. Harlan
Mhm.
Coben, very nice guy.
Indeed.
Lee Child, total gentleman and just a wonderful guy.
Do you know who
Michael
Penny
Connelly,
Hallie is? Have you
who?
ever met Penny Hallie?
The
She's
name
a
sounds familiar.
she's a librarian in
Uh-huh.
charge of children's books, and she was part of Murder and Mayhem in Muskego, one of the founders of it and that stuff. And one year at BoucherCon, I was, you know how they have that box lunch thing
Mm-hmm.
during one of the lunches is like a sandwich. It's like a Huber Law lunch. You don't know what Huber Law is.
No.
Maybe that's a term that's indigenous to Wisconsin. It's where they put you like in a minimum security prison.
Hmm.
But lunch every day is a big bologna sandwich, an apple, and a bag of potato chips. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's what you got at this Loop Nest, which I thought was really kind of ironic. But at any rate, I was out in
Yeah.
the lobby picking up the stupid box lunch, and I was going to get a can of soda. And Penny Hallie came through the door from the room where the tables were all set up, and she said, "Allan, come here." And I said, "I'm getting the soda." And she said, "I said, come here now." I said, "Okay." And I follow her in there, and she walks up to one of those big plywood tabletop things that they put out, a real table. They put the plywood on top to make it bigger. And Lee Childs was there. Barry Eisler was there. And there was an empty chair at the table. And she pointed at it and said, "Sit down." And I looked at her with panic in my eyes. And I said, "Penny." And she said, "You belong here."
Oh my gosh.
And Tess Garrison was sitting alongside of me. And
Wow.
she introduced herself and she said, "Penny's been telling us what funny, great mysteries you write." And I said, "Penny lies. You know that, don't you?" And
Oh my
Penny Hallie
gosh.
looked across the table around the person who was sitting next to me, which was Barry Eisler, and she said, "Don't make me stand up and belch you one in front of all of these people." But it was amazing for me to be there. And
Well,
then,
yeah.
and then one day, I have a tendency to be off. By myself at those things. I really don't think I belong there, is what it amounts to. And I don't. Amazingly enough, I have that part right. But I was at the breakfast, and I took this. They were interviewing the British lady writer that now they consider like the female. Oh, what's her name? Anyway, she comes down from the stage and she goes through the buffet line and she comes back. And I was sitting there with Joanna, and she came over and she said, "May I join you?" to Joanna. And Joanna said, "Don't ask me, it's Allan's table." It was fun.
Wow. Well, I'm going to have to wrap up, but is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish up?
No, I think I've ruined this whole experience for you. All on my own. But
Not at all.
I do appreciate the opportunity. And
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I remember us sitting together at dinner at C3.
Oh my gosh.
And you were the quietest person at that table.
Yes.
And I
Yeah,
remember
was a very
saying to
quiet
Jane,
person.
Jane was, my wife was seated between us. And I said, "You know what I think, Jane?" And she said, I shuddered every time you say that, Allan. And I said, "I think she's the smartest one at the table." And she said, "Coming from you with your IQ, that's very interesting, Allan." I said, "Maybe you should play chess with her." I said, "I don't play chess, Jane." She said, "Yeah, that'd confuse her, wouldn't it?"
That would confuse both of us since I'm not a very good chess player.
Neither was I. That's why I don't play anymore. But I really enjoyed meeting you there. And
Yeah, same here.
this is the best interview I've ever done with anybody.
that's fantastic. Oh, thank you. Because I don't consider myself a natural at doing these things. So anytime I can get this right, I feel like I'm doing something really fantastic. Something.
Well, I thought it worked out really well. And I didn't break anything.
Great. Yeah.
Did anything break at your end?
Oh, not at all. Not that I know of. I won't know until I
good.
actually get the recording. So, but on that note, I just want to say thank you so much again for being here.
And thank you
to all my listeners and viewers, we will be back in 2 weeks. So I'll see you then. Thanks.